Hello everyone, welcome to computer networks topic that we started in the previous week. We talked about the basics of computer networks. We saw how information is transferred in computer networks. We discussed circuit switching, we talked about packet switching, and then we saw different types of computer networks. We talked about the client server network, we talked about the peer-to-peer network, and we saw other types based on the coverage of computer networks. We saw a very important device in computer networks, that was the router. It was responsible for managing and creating networks and interconnecting them, and also responsible for routing the information or finding the shortest path to the destinations. And then we talked about the TCPIP protocol. It was also very important. We talked about IP version 4, and we saw that it has limited address space, and to solve that problem there were two ways that were used. One was static and dynamic IPs, and the second method we used was private and public IP. We took some addresses range out from the IP version 4 address space, and we made them to be used for private networks. The first range we use for large networks, the second one for medium, and the third one we normally use for small local networks. We saw some examples related to that, and then I discussed some very basic threats that you can face when you are accessing your computer systems or going online. We talked about malicious code or malware, any program which anonymously enters your computer system, and it can affect it in many different ways. We talked about a computer virus, a Trojan horse, and computer worms. So today I will continue and finish this remaining part of the lecture. It's very simple, and there are book pages which are mentioned, which you make sure you read them to prepare for the second quiz. Now, we talked about different malwares. To counter that, we have what we call an antivirus software, which basically a utility program that will search for and eradicate all these malwares like viruses, Trojan horses, and worms. And how this antivirus software works, it works with the help of virus signatures. So what are signatures? Signatures, they are like small patterns in the malware infected file that are used to identify what type of malware it is. So these antivirus softwares, what they will do is they will scan your computer system and compare those signatures with the files inside your computer system, and if there is a match, they will notify you that that particular file is infected by that virus. So they can help you identify and also remove those particular malwares from the computer system. Next, we have another very important thing that is called a port probing. Port probing is basically a way to search the internet for unprotected computers. Remember, in TCP/IP protocol, I talked about that. Wait, let me open it first. Yeah, so in the TCP/IP protocol, we made sure that every device on the internet is given a unique address, that is the IP address. I told you we use this IP address to find a destination computer system, but once we reach that computer, we need what we call port numbers to identify which application to communicate with. And these port numbers, they are like virtual gates. So most of these gates must be protected so that a hacker cannot basically intrude into your system and access and get remote access to your computer. What is port probing? Port probing is basically the practice of searching those computers in which their ports are not fully protected. They will start sending simple messages on different ports of a certain destination, and they will check if a certain port is open and unprotected, they can get access to a computer system using that. So it's one of the ways. So make sure your antivirus and firewall software, they are able to block such type of requests. Now, What is a gateway? Gateway is basically a device which is used to interconnect two dissimilar networks. For example, a router can connect two networks, two computer networks, for example, together. Gateway can basically connect, for example, a mobile network and a computer network. If they want to interact with each other, we can use gateway in such situations. So read through this book, page 343, for more details. Next, this is a very important software, Firewall. Now, the antivirus software, it protects you from all those internal threats within your computer system. For example, if your file is infected, the antivirus software will help you identify and remove those particular malwares. What is a firewall? Firewall software basically protects you from external threats. Whatever traffic, whatever internet traffic that goes into your system or goes out of your system, that will be analyzed by a firewall software. Think of it like a security gate. For example, when you enter KFUPM, there are 2-3 security gates that you have to go through. They are like security checkpoints. In similar way, any traffic, any information that comes from the internet into your computer system or goes out of your computer system, it will be analyzed by the firewall software. And it will make sure that if information is coming to your computer system, it will make sure someone has requested that information. If no one requested, that means someone is basically trying to attack your computer system. In that case, it can block that particular request. And it's also very important in networks, big networks. For example, in KFUPM, we have network level firewall software. It can do a lot of things. It can analyze the traffic, whatever requests you make, it can be analyzed, logs can be generated. Similarly, it can limit the flow of data. For example, different websites that are blocked, we can set user limits. For example, per user, you are allowed to download maybe 50 GB or 100 GB per month. These type of rules, you can set them in the firewall software. So it's very essential software, and your network administrator is responsible for providing you that particular software. Now, next we have what we call a very basic introduction to encryption. Remember, I told you in the protocol section that we have two types of protocols to transfer the web pages. That was HTTP and HTTPS. HTTPS is a secure version of HTTP. How is it secure? It uses what we call encryption technique. In encryption technique, what we do is we basically scramble. We change our information which is going to be sent on the network. So what we do is, for example, if I have to send a certain text like this hello world, or think of it like a credit card number. So if I have to send this text on the internet, one method is, if for example I'm using simple HTTP protocol, in that case the information will be just put inside a packet and sent on the network. And in the network, if there is some intruder, some hacker who is capturing your packets, he can easily open it. What encryption will do is basically using what we call an encryption key, it will convert whatever you are about to send into some cipher text. That is just like a scrambled message. So if you zoom in, maybe the capital H will be replaced with hash, E may be replaced with percentage sign, L with I, second L with U, and so on. So now this information, the ciphertext, will be sent on the network, so that even if someone captures your packet and opens it, he will see this ciphertext only. He will not be able to identify what was the original message. So this way we can protect our information. Now, encryption, there are many types of encryption. There's a complete separate course at master's or PhD level related to encryption, in which we study how can we make our keys strong, how can we share the keys from source to destination. So based on that, we have different types. HTTPS, it uses what we call the SSL encryption technique. It's a very strong encryption technique. You can search Google more about this encryption technique. It will help you further understand this topic. Now, moving further, we have another type of threats that can appear online, that is called identity theft. Identity theft happens when someone gets your personal information without your knowledge. And he can use that information to commit a crime, to basically he can do anything. Now, this privacy protection, this is a little different from your computer's virus or malware protection. Malwares, they basically affect your computer system. Privacy, basically, it will not affect your computer system, but it will just use your personal information and distribute it without your knowledge. So there are different type of scams. Sometimes you give that type of information by yourself. For example, phishing, you get phishing emails, you get email from certain organization that okay, we are upgrading our system, kindly send us your ID and password. So please make sure you don't send your passwords through email. Sometimes they make fake websites and they send you these fraudulent email messages, so make sure you are careful with that. You can read more about this on book pages 347, 349 up to 351. Now this last part, which is related to intellectual property. What is intellectual property? Any property that is created through your intellect, through your mind. For example, if you on the opposite side, let's say you go to IKEA, you purchase a chair, so that is basically a physical property that you own. But if you think about an application design, you thought that okay, you will create a certain game, these are the parameters, these what the stages will look like. So that whole idea is basically your intellectual property, and it must be protected, so that even if you design a certain game, so later on you can sell it and make money from it. Because if it's not protected, it will be chaos for you. So to protect your intellectual property, that is your ideas, your music, photos, logos, videos, and all these things, there are many different ways. Some of them they are mentioned here. So first of all, we have what we call trademarks. Trademarks, they are used to protect the corporate company logos and their product names. For example, Intel, the name and the logo which they are using is protected by a trademark. The logo Nvidia, the logo HP, iPhone, Samsung, all these companies, the logo which they are using and the name itself, it is protected by a trademark. Secondly, we have what we call patent. Patents are used to protect the design of new inventions. Think of it in such a way that let's say you are designing a new mobile phone, a flip phone. Nowadays this is very common. So most companies, what they will do is they will patent their idea. For example, where the hinge will be, what will be the size of the phone, where will be the volume rocker, where will be the power button. All these things, they are part of the design, and this part is protected using patents. Also, patents, they are very commonly used by the animation studios. For example, Disney and Pixar, when they are designing a new character for their animation, so what they do is they will patent the design, so that later on, if a toy company wants to make toy from that particular design, they will have to actually pay the company, Disney or Pixar, whichever one is making that. So if anyone wants to use your design and your design is patented, you can set up a certain amount. They will have to pay you before you can use their design. Then the remaining intellectual property, like your software, games, music, movies, they are basically protected using what we call copyright laws. They use different techniques. For example, softwares, they are protected by license numbers. So whenever you purchase, for example, Microsoft Office, you will get a license number from the developer. You can use that license to register and to use your software. And on the other end, the opposite side is piracy. That is to somehow overwriting these copyright laws and using the software without actually paying the creator. So it has many economic impacts, so you should not do that. Piracy, I also told you later on, the pirated content, it can contain different type of malwares inside, so it can affect your computer system and in many ways. Now, another thing we have is what we call copy protection standards. Copy protection standards, they are used to physically protect the disks from being copied. This type of standards, they are very common problem for basically the movie industry. The movie industry, they are mainly affected by this method because whenever their movie is launched, for example a Blu-ray disc or Ultra HD disc, people they can basically make a physical copy of that disc and then distribute it online. So that is one big problem for big movie production studios. So what they do is they have copy protection standards that will make sure that the disk cannot be copied physically as well. So that is another copy protection standard. So now after that we have what else we have, let's see. So yeah, sometimes you can use these different copyrighted material under the fair use regulation. For example, the university can provide you, or you can request another university, you want to use their software for a certain experiment, you can request and they can give you access for a certain period of time. So that is normal. As for students, you should be very careful with what we call plagiarism. Plagiarism is basically the failure to cite source or pretending it is your own work without giving credit to the original creator. This type of thing is very common with students, especially when you are writing reports. So normally what you do is you go online, you search for the material, and whatever you find, you start copy pasting. You just copy the material, paste it on Word, and make certain paragraphs, and that's it. Khalas, you submit on the blackboard or whatever, wherever the teacher asked. That is pure plagiarism. Remember, all the university faculty, we have plagiarism checking softwares. So once you upload your report, it will give me how much percentage of that report was copied, from where it was copied. So you have to be very careful when you are writing, especially the project reports and later on your final project report. Your plagiarism must be under 15%. This is a requirement. Okay. So how to write it properly? So to write it properly, what you can do is you can get the source material. I mean, you can go to Google and search for the material, but when you want to write down your report, you should read the material and then write it down in your own words. Don't just copy paste. Okay, so write down in your own words, and then at the end of the report make a separate section which is called the references chapter. So in the references you include the links of all the source material that you used in such a way that basically you are giving credit to the creators as well. So this is a proper way to write your report. So make sure you don't plagiarize your work. So it's unethical and it's unlawful as well. So we have some more examples related to the intellectual property. So if you look here, you can see, for example, this book, the design is protected by a copyright law. So the creator, it will be paid according to that. Similarly, the music notes, they are also protected by copyright. This design of a light bulb, design of a Apple Watch in the future maybe, so the sensor placement, all these things, they are part of the design, and that is protected by a patent. And then at the lower section we have some company names and logos, Samba and Nvidia, Albake. So all of these, they are protected by trademarks. So this is just a basic introduction to network security and privacy, how to protect yourself when you go online. Read through the book pages which are mentioned in these slides. I will also post some quiz sample questions so that you can prepare for the quiz later on. Okay, that's it for right now. So